vacation. So you were shaking your head when Seth Walder joined us.
Yeah.
Do we have the Jerry Jeudy thing? All during this answer, I asked him, the NFL has Jerry Jeudy as a top 100 player. So I then spun that to Seth. Is he a true top 100 player? And Spencer was disapproving of this answer.
I've been a long-time Jerry Jeudy defender for years. I think this time last year, I would have been talking him up. He's one thing about Jeudy. He's always scored well in a metric we have called open score. So it's a receiver's ability to get open, generate openness, whether or not they're targeted. And so that's a player tracking based metric. And that's obviously a skill. Does that make him a top 100 player? I would not put him there yet. I wouldn't put him there. There's just too many other good receivers.
Now you were. I mean, that's as vehemently as I've seen you disagree with an answer there. What do you take umbrage with there?
First of all, I think it's kind of funny that he called himself this Jerry Jeudy, this champion of Jerry Jeudy, but then he's not going to have him in the top 100. He even said last year when everybody else was like, "What the hell are the Browns doing trading for this receiver who some were calling a bust and then extending him?" Your co-host hated the fact that they gave him an extension at the time. And then he goes out and has this brilliant season. If you're a true Jerry Jeudy supporter and defender and champion, you would feel like he belongs in the top 100. And I can say, obviously, outside of here, I host the Locked On Browns podcast. We're doing like a network-wide top 100. Same thing he said that he's doing with at ESPN. And I've been adamant that Jerry Jeudy belongs in this top 100. Ours gets released next week, so I don't know how like the other hosts felt about it, but I 100% had Jerry Jeudy in my top 100. I think I had him somewhere in like the early 80s, similar to what they had him on this poll. But I don't know. I just feel, I know it was 1 year. I get it. I know people want like the longevity thing. They want to see it consistently, but you also got to remember, like, as we've talked about numerous times on this station, like you have a guy who was playing with a rotating cast of characters at quarterback between Deshaun, who was awful, Jameis Winston, who turned the ball over a lot, but he had his best numbers with Jameis. And then on top of that, like two guys that they were just kind of throwing out there and seeing what they could do at the end of the season to see if there was anything viable that they wanted to use for next year or this year. Like he did not have the best quarterback situation. And he still went out and was a top 5 receiver in yards, put up 1,200 yards, his first 1,000-yard season, gets that Pro Bowl not recognition. Like, I just think he proved that he is the number 1 wide receiver that people thought he could be when he got drafted. And to me, even in a 1-year sample size, because that's the thing, like you're doing this year to year anyway. Like next year there'll be a new top 100, and maybe he won't be in it. But based off of last year, which is a lot of what this is based off of, I think he absolutely proved that he's a top 100 player.
So it's interesting. I think Jerry's pretty underrated.
Yeah.
Like PFF would put their top 32 wide receivers for the season. They didn't have him in their top 32.
Yeah, I noticed that. I saw that a couple weeks ago.
And like, listen, T. Higgins, all right, that's a conversation. Devontae Adams at this point in his game, that's a conversation. Devontae Smith. But you're getting like DJ Moore. All right. Lad McConkey. Okay. Zay Flowers, who really has not had that year yet.
Yeah,
although last year was
Jerry
a nice
had
step.
a better year than him, yeah.
Rashee Rice, who was trying to stay out of jail last year. Josh Downs. Like, these are nice wide receivers. But if we go to the production tape, yeah, Jerry does have certain numbers, especially overall yardage. But at the same point, like, I think he's the toughest player to grade. Because, like, he's not a top 10 wide receiver, which starts to put him in danger of a top 100 conversation. When I say top 10, I mean, like, if you drafted the top 10 wide receivers in the NFL, he's not one of the first 10 off the board. But he is in that class of guys who has the tools. Can do it, but just hasn't had that indisputable season. Last year, you can dispute. He put up a lot of yards in a bad team, and they had one receiver. And the receiver's name was Jerry Jeudy. I wouldn't put him in top 100. But I think he's somewhere right in that next tier of the next 50 players, and somebody who, if they had the number 1 pick and drafted Cam Ward, that's a guy that likes to throw the ball down the field. That's a guy with a big arm. I probably would be saying this is the year where he ascends based off what he did last year into next year.
I agree with you on the fact that there certainly are a lot of good receivers in this league. I mean, like you can name the big ones off the top of your head: the Justin Jeffersons, the Jamar Chase, the probably AJ Brown's next in line.
Don
somewhere
Hudson,
there.
we were talking about earlier.
I would say obviously like Amon-Ra St. Brown's been really good. I think CeeDee Lamb falls in that category. I think Mike Evans, even as an older receiver, still, fringe top 10 guy that continues to just produce at a high level. I think Puka Nacua probably falls in there somewhere. But do I think Jerry Jeudy is as good as, if not better than, like, the T. Higgins? Yes. Do I think Nico Collins is in that conversation? Yes. I do think Jerry sort of falls in, to your point, on like the tiers, like into that same sort of tier with that next group of guys. A guy like Malik Neighbors kind of comes to mind. Tyreek Hill, I think, would still be considered top 10 by a lot of people. He also had a down year last year, and you could say situation and quarterback and all that, but he was the number one player on this entire list a year ago.
But to push back to what you said there, how many NFL GMs would take, and I know that this is a little bit of a fruitless exercise, but it is a perspective exercise. How many NFL GMs would take Jerry Jeudy over T. Higgins? Same thing with each one of those guys you mentioned.
I think that's honestly a really interesting question, because I
kind of answer,
because I think what I'm saying is I think it'd be more split than maybe you think, because I like T. Higgins has been good. Do I think T. Higgins is like, I don't know. I've never looked at T. Higgins and felt like he's a top 10 wide receiver in football. I actually was arguing the Bengals, I thought, were silly to pay him and Jamar Chase. I was like, hey, just keep Jamar Chase. That's the guy you pay. And then you go sort of replenish your wide receiving core, or like behind Jamar Chase. I thought it was kind of silly they paid him just because they wanted to have a number 2 wide receiver that they felt like was good. And I get, like, there was people throwing out the stats that, like, when T. Higgins plays, they have a better record when they're like, whatever the record is when he doesn't play. So I get it, but I'm also like, you can't pay everybody. And so I kind of felt like the chasm between Jamar Chase and T. Higgins is pretty vast, in my opinion. Like, so I don't think that he's close.
The reason why I brought up T. Higgins is I share some of you shouldn't pay 2 wide receivers that kind of money, and so we agree. But I think T is the quintessential, I don't know if he's a number 1 receiver, and it looks different than Jerry Jeudy. But you had said something early. I don't know he's a number 1 wide receiver.
Right.
Like, I think Jerry Jeudy, he put up number 1 wide receiver stats last year.
You're saying you don't think Jerry Jeudy is? You don't know Jerry Jeudy?
No, I think he's a very, very, very nice player. But I think the jury's still out if he's a number 1.
I think he showed last year he can be a number 1, and I think
he showed last year he didn't have Cortland Sutton, or I can't remember the third wide receiver that was highly drafted around him.
When you have the numbers he had, though,
if you give him
with those quarterbacks, with the quarterbacks that he had, and he still put up those numbers, I think that tells me he's a number 1 wide receiver.
It's interesting. I kind of think for Jerry Jeudy, he's at this unfair point where, on one hand, I think he earns a lot more credit after the way he played last year with bad quarterback play around him. On the other, the quarterback play is not guaranteed to be any better this year, and there might be a statistical regression that would make sense with where you are, and that's going to hurt his perception even further.
Yeah, I mean, that's very plausible. I also think, too, though, and this, I mean, now we're getting into the weeds on, like, just this basically just becoming like
it is legal in Ohio now.
Who should start at quarterback conversation again, which we've obviously exhausted at this point leading up to training camp. But if Joe Flacco starts the year, right, and he gets like 6 or 7 games, to me, part of the reason why I think Joe Flacco should start is because Joe Flacco is a quarterback that we know without question makes the guys around him better. He did that in 2023. He turned basically single-handedly David Njoku into a Pro Bowler that year. The numbers he put up with Joe Flacco are the reason he went to the Pro Bowl that year. He made Elijah Moore look like the best receiver, the best version of the receiver that the Browns thought they were getting when they traded for him was when he played with Joe Flacco. Like, he makes the guys around him better. And I think with a guy like Flacco, who's the gunslinger, throws it down the field, he could air it out to Jerry Jeudy a bunch. You get a lot of that Jameis Winston effect.
But that's a lot of money in the hands of Njoku, a potential future money for Jerry Jeudy, the development of guys like Tillman and Harold Fannin, and you're putting it all in the basket, or you're all in the lap of a 40-year-old quarterback who we could get 3 games in, and not for his own fault, but the dude just looks washed.
Right. No, listen, I understand, like, he probably isn't going to play all 17 games. I've talked about that at plenty already. But I still think, even without Flacco, I think all the quarterbacks in this room basically will be looking Jerry Jeudy's way. Like, I'll say this. I think Jerry Jeudy is going to put up, at the very least, similar, like the same numbers he did last year, but I'm willing to bet that
Can I
he
get you
actually
to lock it in.
I'm willing to bet that he actually has a better season this year than he did last year, and I think part of that is going to be he's going to score more touchdowns this year. He only had 4.
That's a smart bet there. Just because if you were like he's going to have more yards, I'm like I don't know they're going to throw for enough yardage for him.
Well, listen, and there's something to be said too for like you're going back to Stefanski's offense in its purest form. You're going to run the ball more. I get all that, but listen, there's still room for a receiver to catch 90 passes on any team in the NFL. Like Jerry should still get targeted enough where like 90 receptions make sense for him. So I'm willing to say he's going to put up at least the same, but better. I'll go and say even better numbers than he did a year ago.
216-474-0092. Is Jerry Jeudy a top 100 player? He might be one of the guys who I think is on the cusp of that and deservedly so. And he might be hurt by wherever this season goes.